Hi guys, Chess Learning for Life here, back with another video. So today I'll be sharing a very roller coaster game between Gukesh and Arjun, both from India, in the Chennai Grandmaster Festival. So yeah, you heard it, this game is very roller coaster, very interesting. Let's start off. Now this is the Arjun court defense against the English opening, which will normally transpose into some Queen's Gambit decline stuff. So this is the early exchange, very standard stuff. Now bishop f5 is trying to get like this good diagonal, and black doesn't mind trade it off for the bishop on d3 because black's light square bishop is the bad bishop, while white's light square bishop is the good bishop. So a bad bishop for a good bishop trade is obviously good for black. So here white has to go for g4 and h4 to try and expand on the king side. Even if bishop g6, h4, h5 will come, therefore Arjun just brings the bishop back to e6. Now some more development. Here queen b6, very interesting. Now you don't want to just develop your knight here because it just gives g5 a tempo. Now there is knight e4, which is fine for black, but you just don't want to help white expand on the king side with tempo. So here you might be wondering, isn't this just a free pawn? Well, no, because after you take, g5 traps the bishop, and if you go like h6, then queen h5 and the bishop is just gone. This pawn is pinned, so be careful not to take these poison pawns. Now I don't understand is why Arjun went queen b6 and then took on h4. So now you don't even have the queen's defense and you took on h4, but Arjun calculated this carefully because after g5 you can go knight e7, and when the knight hops back you can use your knight to protect this h4 bishop, and adds another attacker here, but then black can pin it, and if white unpins then you can just capture here, and then h6 will come and then to save the bishop. Now bishop h3 to try and trade it off, but h5, and it's basically saying if you take then I take, and my rook will protect my dark square bishop. And Gukesh says fine, because after all these trades white can win back the pawn on g4, and his position is just very active compared to black. Because what is this knight doing here? What is this knight doing here? What is this king doing here? This king is very exposed. And now, why knight f8, you may ask? Now, why not just castle? Try finding the move for white after black long castles. So here there's this tactic because of this great bishop. There's just knight takes d5. Because after pawn takes, then rook c1 check, and you just have to give up your queen like this. And black's definitely losing this. So you can't even castle. Now Arjun tries maneuvering the knights like this to try and castle, but if you castle right here, then the knight is pinned, and just knight f4 and maybe even rook e6, but then rook h1 comes. See, white is much more active than black, because what is black doing here? Black can just hunt these pawns and that's it, there's no king to hunt. But then white has a king to hunt, so you still can't castle. And here grabbing a pawn is given a blunder, but I mean, what else? The rook is coming, and then something like knight f4, and yeah, white's position is very strong. The rook comes down, black must block or else he'll lose a rook. Now bishop d6, very good, just putting pressure here. The next move's just knight f4 and then, or even just queen f4, queen e5, going to g7. Now black just attacks the bishop. Now you may think of sacking the knight right here with queen f4. Now it could be strong, like after queen e5, if it wasn't for this perpetual. Now if it goes to h1, then even queen e4 check trades the queen. So you have to go to f1. If you go to h2, then again queen comes back and everything's fine. If queen comes down, then even queen takes with check and then knight moves away. The queen can protect this knight on f8. So you're forced to go to f1, and if queen back, then you can just take, and you can't take because there's checkmate in 1. You have to go d7, and then after all these trades, it's just gonna be like an equal endgame. And if white takes, then this queenside majority would be very strong because you captured the pawn on b2. So white cannot conduct the attack like this. Therefore, Arjun repeated moves and went with the bishop back to e5. Now, e5 is not that good because e5 is for the queen, right? You want to get the queen here, the bishop here, and then like a knight here. So what you want to do is actually get the bishop back to f4. And then after something like queen takes, then knight to g3, just getting the knight out of the way to protect the king. And then the idea is, if there's a random pawn push, then you go back with bishop d6. And then if knight comes up, then you can take this knight. Look, the difference between having a knight on f4 and g3 is there's no knight f5 because you can just take this knight. And then the idea now is to just go queen f4. There's no knight in e2 for black to take. And queen e5, queen g7 is just very strong. So Gukesh missed this and even went bishop g7, but now just king e7 and it solves everything. King can even run up to d6, and all you can do is maybe get a perpetual here, because although this king is weak, but black has a queenside majority here. You have to be careful. Here, Gukesh really should have just repeated. This is kind of ambitious. Now e4 also should still repeat it, because now, can you find the move for black? It's just pretty forced. If you take, then it just helps your opponent, because let's say after you take, then queen takes, and then if your king moves away, then I mean, you can do bishop takes, but then where's your bishop going, right? Your bishop can't go back to g7, and there's no saving this bishop. So maybe just rook takes, and then rook takes, and yeah, black can maybe survive this endgame, but this is still better for white. So here it's basically forced that you have to give up the exchange, and then you block the queen's way out, and you capture another pawn, and you just start pushing your connected pass pawns, and your knight is very good defending your king. It's not is not worse than this rook right here, because what is this rook doing? Now these knights are very strong, posted in the center of the board. Now Arjun just pushing, doesn't care, because the king is safe around the knights. Here another pawn, and another pawn. Gukesh just giving away all his pawns, but there's just no attack. And now here comes the c pawn. Here Arjun even sacks the c pawn so he can get a queen trade, because here if knight takes, then there's some nasty discoveries, knight c5, knight d2 to just win the queen. Therefore I really don't like this check, but I mean there's nothing more. So there's a queen trade, and it also allows the king to come up to support this pawn. Now this rook check is a very like rookie mistake by Gukesh. Like, although this is better for black, but if you just came with the king to f1, try and stop the pawn with the king, then this is still holdable, because the connected pass pawns, the c pawn has already been removed, and the other pawn is way back on f7, which is barely has any way to move up. And just king f1, king e2, and just try to fiddle around with these pieces to try and stop the pawn. But no, he went for check, which just helps Arjun push the king up to support the pawn. And here knight d1 is forced to stop the pawn. I mean, you can protect knight, but then like something like this, and f5 comes, f4, f3, f2. There's nobody stopping this pawn if you use this rook to protect this knight, to protect the square. So knight d1 check, and then knight e3 check, knight goes back, and now you see Arjun kind of zigzagged around to this square. Why? Because in c2 there's an e3 square to check the king, but on e2 there's no c3 square to check the king because there's a knight here. So knight b2, and now the plan is simply just to kick away this knight with the other knight, and Gukesh stops it. Can't go knight d3, so you maneuver the other knight to d3. Now the threat is just to capture this knight, and this knight on d3 also blocks the rook's vision on this pawn. So yeah, basically Gukesh is totally lost here. He still played on, hoping for this fork, but then simply knight e4 stops it, and Gukesh resigned. So basically Gukesh was totally winning, but slipped the attack, and Arjun barely made it out and won because of his extra pawns. I hope you guys enjoyed this game. Make sure to like and subscribe for more chess content, and I'll see you all next time. Bye.